on the quiet waterfront of Long Island, New York, sits a Dutch colonial home that looks like something straight out of a family postcard. White siding, brown shutters, and a small boathouse tucked behind it. To most passersby, it's just another picturesque house in an equally picturesque neighborhood. But behind those walls lies one of the most disturbing stories in American history. This is 112 Ocean Avenue in the small suburban town of Amityville, a place whose very name would soon become synonymous with horror. Before it was a movie, before the legend, before the countless debates about ghosts or hoaxes, there was a tragedy so shocking it would stain this home's legacy forever. It began in the early hours of November 13th, 1974. A young man named Ronald DeFeo Jr. walked through this very house, room by room, and murdered his entire family as they slept. His parents, his two brothers, his two sisters. 6 people gone in a single night. The crime would send shockwaves through the peaceful community of Amityville. A house that once represented the American dream had suddenly become the embodiment of an unspeakable nightmare. But that wasn't the end of 112 Ocean Avenue's story, because within a year another family would move in, hoping to start fresh, unaware that what waited for them inside would ignite one of the most famous, haunting stories the world has ever known. Inside the house were the DeFeos, a large, seemingly ordinary family of 7. Ronald DeFeo Sr., the strict but hard-working father, Louise DeFeo, the devoted mother, and their 5 children, Ronald Jr., nicknamed Butch, Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John Matthew. By morning, 6 of them would be dead. At around 3:15 a.m., Butch DeFeo moved quietly through the house with a .35 caliber Marlin rifle. One by one, he entered each bedroom and shot his family as they slept. No signs of struggle. No one even appeared to wake. Within minutes, the DeFeo home fell silent, except for the echo of 6 gunshots. When police later arrived, they found all 6 victims lying face down in their beds, each killed with a single shot. It was as if the house itself had swallowed their screams. Butch's story to police changed repeatedly. First, he claimed the murders were the work of a mob hitman. Then he said he heard voices commanding him to kill. Investigators found no sign of forced entry, no silencer, no drugs or alcohol to explain his state of mind. Eventually, Butch confessed. He admitted he had killed his family, though why has never been fully understood. His trial began in October 1975, less than a year after the murders. The defense pleaded insanity, claiming he heard demonic voices. The prosecution argued it was pure greed and rage, that Butch wanted insurance money and freedom from his controlling father. On November 21st, 1975, Ronald DeFeo Jr. was found guilty of 6 counts of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 6 consecutive life terms, ensuring he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. With the trial's end, most people thought the story of 112 Ocean Avenue would finally be over. But in truth, it had only just begun, because barely 13 months later, the house would be sold, and the new owners would claim they weren't alone inside. Most people in Amityville couldn't believe it. Who would want to live there? But to George and Kathleen Lutz, the price seemed too good to pass up. It was December 1975, a neat winter on Long Island. The Lutz family, George, Kathy, and her 3 children, were starting a new life together. George was a successful businessman, Kathy a devoted mother, and the home felt like a dream. 3 stories tall with a boathouse, a swimming pool, and that iconic gambrel roof that gave it its eye window look. They bought it for just $80,000, fully furnished, furniture that still belonged to the murdered DeFeo family. Before moving in, a Catholic priest came to bless the house. According to the Lutzes, as he sprinkled holy water and began his prayers, he suddenly froze. A deep, disembodied voice growled, "Get out!" He fled the house immediately, shaken to his core. At first, George and Kathy tried to brush it off, chalking it up to nerves and the heavy history of the place. But soon, the atmosphere inside began to shift. The house was cold, even when the fireplace was roaring. Strange odors drifted through rooms with no source. Doors slammed on their own. And George began to change. He grew distant, irritable, obsessively tending the fire, waking every night around 3:15 a.m., the exact time the DeFeo murders had taken place. Kathy claimed she'd wake from vivid nightmares about the murders, seeing flashes of the victims lying in their beds. The children said they saw eyes glowing red outside their windows, and one child began speaking to an unseen friend, a pig-like creature they called Jody. For 28 days, the Lutzes endured what they later described as a living hell. By the end of January 1976, they fled the house, leaving everything behind: furniture, clothes, personal belongings, even food still sitting on the kitchen counter. They never went back. Whatever had taken hold of 112 Ocean Avenue had driven another family out. When the Lutz family fled their home after just 28 days, they refused to speak publicly. At first. But whispers spread fast through Amityville. What could drive a healthy, stable family to abandon everything overnight? Soon, their story would become national news. According to George and Kathy Lutz, the house wasn't haunted by memories. It was alive with something darker. They spoke of black ooze seeping from keyholes and walls, a swarm of flies that filled one room in the dead of winter, doors ripped off their hinges, footsteps pacing above them at night when no one else was awake. And then there were the voices, low whispers echoing from empty rooms, chants that grew louder each night, one phrase repeating over and over, "Will you stop?" As if something unseen mocked their fear. Kathy claimed to have seen a demonic face appear in the fireplace bricks. George said he woke one night to see his wife levitating above the bed. And in one chilling account, a heavy wooden door was ripped clean off its hinges right before their eyes. Each night, the house seemed to sink deeper into chaos, and George himself began to lose his grip on reality. He grew obsessed with the idea that the house was possessed, not just haunted, but inhabited by some malevolent force. He even claimed the shape of a cloven-hoofed demon appeared in the snow outside, leading straight to the house. And nowhere else. Skeptics called it hysteria, but to the Lutzes it felt real, painfully, terrifyingly real. By the end of January 1976, they fled 112 Ocean Avenue in the dead of night. No lights on, no goodbyes, just fear, pure and consuming. The next morning, the house stood quiet once more. The windows empty, the driveway untouched, but the legend had just been born. When the Lutz family story hit the press, America couldn't look away. A family haunted out of their home, the same house where 6 people had been murdered just a year before. It was the perfect storm of tragedy and terror. Within weeks, reporters camped outside 112 Ocean Avenue, hoping to catch a glimpse of something. Anything. Neighbors whispered. Tourists began driving by, snapping photos. The house on a quiet Long Island street had become a spectacle. Then came the book. In 1977, author Jay Anson published The Amityville Horror, A True Story, based on extensive interviews with the Lutz family. The book detailed everything: the slime, the voices, the levitations, the demonic eyes, all described with cinematic precision. It became an instant bestseller, selling millions of copies and convincing much of the world that the haunting was real. And Hollywood came calling. In 1979, the Amityville Horror film premiered. It was chilling, atmospheric, and marketed as based on a true story. The film's success cemented the Amityville legend forever, spawning sequels, remakes, documentaries, even parodies. But behind the scenes, cracks began to form. Skeptics, investigators, and even former friends of the Lutzes began to question everything. The Warrens, the famous paranormal investigators called to the house, claimed they recorded demonic voices and captured a ghostly boy on camera. Yet scientific teams later found nothing unusual. No cold spots, no evidence of hauntings, nothing that defied explanation. The lawyer who once represented both the Lutzes and Butch DeFeo would later claim the haunting was a fabrication, cooked up during a night of drinking to help sell a book. The Lutzes, however, never recanted their story. They stood by every word until their deaths, insisting the horror they lived through was real, even if the world didn't believe them. By then, it didn't matter whether the haunting was truth or fiction. The line had blurred completely. The media had done its job, transforming one family's nightmare into a cultural phenomenon. What began as tragedy had become a franchise. And yet, through the noise of fame and disbelief, one question remained. What really happened inside that house? Today, 112 Ocean Avenue still stands, though you wouldn't recognize it right away. The famous evil eye windows are gone. The address has been changed. The paint is fresh, the lawn is manicured, and new families have come and gone, trying to live normal lives in a home forever haunted by its past. But the shadow of Amityville never truly left. The murders, the haunting, the books, the movies, they've become something larger than life. A blend of horror, history, and folklore that's been retold for nearly 50 years. Ronald DeFeo Jr. remained in prison for the rest of his life, passing away in 2021. The Lutz family moved far from Long Island, and though they rarely spoke publicly again, they never backed down from their story. Whether they were victims of the supernatural or of fear itself is something we'll never truly know. Over the decades, paranormal investigators, skeptics, and true crime researchers have all tried to uncover the truth. Some claim to feel an oppressive energy in the house. Others say it's just another suburban home. Ordinary, quiet, and empty of anything but memory. What's certain is that the Amityville story changed the landscape of modern horror. It blurred the line between fact and fiction, between murder and myth. It showed how easily real tragedy can evolve into legend, and how deeply people crave answers, even when none can be found. In the end, maybe the true horror of Amityville isn't ghosts or demons. Maybe it's what happens when human darkness seeps into the places we call home, and never quite leaves. Because sometimes, the scariest stories aren't the ones we imagine. They're the ones that actually happened.